Charlie Ramsey was the IT manager of a large building that used to be a nursing home. He had been working there for over 5 years and had become quite familiar with the hallways and rooms of the building. Despite the history of the building, he had never encountered anything supernatural. That was until one fateful night. It was a quiet night, and Charlie was working late, trying to finish up some important work. As he was typing away on his computer, he heard a loud door slam from down the hallway. He assumed it was just one of the other employees leaving for the night, so he continued working. However, a few minutes later, his computer turned on and off by itself. Charlie was startled and looked around, trying to see if anyone was in the room with him. But the room was empty, and the door was closed. Suddenly, he heard a tapping noise on the windows. It sounded like someone was trying to get his attention. He cautiously walked over to the window, but there was no one there. He couldn't see anything outside except for the darkness of the night. Feeling unnerved, Charlie decided to take a break and go for a walk. As he walked down the hallway, he heard the sound of people running, but when he turned around, no one was there. It was as if the sound had disappeared into thin air. As he continued walking, he heard bloody clawing screams coming from one of the rooms. Charlie felt his heart race and he knew he had to investigate. He approached the door to the room slowly, trying to prepare himself for what he might find. When he opened the door, he saw an old person sitting in a chair, talking to someone, but there was no one else in the room. The old person was talking incoherently, as if they were having a conversation with a ghost. Charlie tried to speak to the old person, but they didn't respond to him. Feeling frightened and confused, Charlie quickly left the room and decided to return to his office. As he walked back down the hallway, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around, but there was no one there. It was then that he realized he was not alone in the building. Charlie decided to leave the building and head home. He knew that he wouldn't be able to get any work done with the unsettling events that had occurred that night. As he left the building, he looked back at it and saw something that made his blood run cold. In one of the windows on the top floor, he saw the silhouette of a person staring back at him. The figure had a ghostly glow, and Charlie knew that it was not of this world. After that night, Charlie refused to work late or be alone in the building. He had encountered something beyond his understanding, and he knew that it was not something he wanted to experience again. From that day on, Charlie told his colleagues about the supernatural events that occurred in the building. They all agreed that there was something strange going on, and some of them even claimed to have seen ghosts themselves. They all agreed that there was something strange going on, and some of them even claimed to have seen ghosts themselves. Charlie's colleagues began to share their own experiences, telling stories of cold spots in the hallway, unexplained footsteps, and doors opening and closing on their own. One employee claimed to have seen a ghostly figure walking down the hallway in the middle of the night. Another employee reported hearing a child's laughter coming from an empty room. Charlie was shocked by the number of reports, and he knew that there was something truly sinister going on in the building. He decided to do some research and discovered that the building had a long history of paranormal activity. It had been built on the site of an old cemetery, and there were rumors that the remains of the dead were still buried beneath the building. One night, as Charlie was working late, he heard a strange noise coming from the ceiling. It sounded like scratching and clawing, as if someone was trying to break through the roof. The noise grew louder and more intense, and Charlie could feel his heart racing in his chest. Suddenly, the noise stopped, and there was an eerie silence in the room. Charlie was too afraid to move, too afraid to even breathe. He waited for what felt like hours, but nothing happened. Eventually, Charlie mustered up the courage to leave his office and investigate. As he walked down the hallway, he heard a strange whispering in his ear. He turned around, but there was no one there. The whispering continued, growing louder and more intense until Charlie could barely stand it. Suddenly, the lights in the hallway flickered and went out, leaving Charlie in total darkness. He felt something brush past him, and he could hear the sound of footsteps running away from him. The footsteps stopped suddenly, and Charlie heard a low, guttural growl coming from the darkness. Terrified, Charlie began to run, trying to find his way back to his office. But the darkness seemed to be closing in on him, and he could feel something breathing down his neck. Just as he thought he couldn't take it anymore, the lights flickered back on, and Charlie found himself standing in front of his office door. He quickly unlocked the door and stepped inside, slamming the door shut behind him. As he sat at his desk, panting and sweating, Charlie realized that he could never return to that building again. He had encountered something truly evil, and he knew that he was lucky to have made it out alive. Years later, Charlie heard that the building had been torn down and replaced with a new development. But he knew that the ghosts of the past would always haunt that land, and that the memories of his encounter would stay with him forever.